Family legend has it that the first time Mike saw Claire, he walked up to her and said, "I'm gonna marry you." It was at the 1st of September. Mike went to 1st grade and Claire went to 2nd grade. She smiled modestly at the boy and continued talking to her friends. And he obeyed his mom's tugging hand and went to his class. When Claire proudly told about it at home, her dad laughed. "Well, how many more suitors will you have in your life? No matter how many, this is the first," Mom argued. "And look how determined he is." Even though there was a difference of half a year between the children, and it would not be felt if both studied in the same parallel. However, the different classes made things more complicated. Claire seemed to herself much older than the little suitor. However, Mike was characterized by persistence and stubbornness. Having found out where the girl lives, he began to escort her to the entrance. At first they teased the bride and groom, but Mike didn't give up. Then Claire told him, "It doesn't hurt you to be teased. They're jealous." He replied with mature reasoning, "And then they don't take offense to the truth. We'll still be bride and groom." "Fool." The girl slapped his forehead with the palm of her hand. Mike smiled. "That's not true. I'm a better student than all the boys in my class." It was really true. He was so far above his peers in his studies that the school committee suggested his parents to transfer him to the externship. The boy rejoiced. "That means I can catch up with Claire. Not only catch up and overtake," his mom encouraged him. Mike eagerly took up the accelerated program. He came to school less often now, but he always came to the end of his 2nd grade class to walk the girl to the driveway. Then he would run home to study again. At the next ruler, they already stood next to each other in the parallel of 3rd grades. And a year later, when Claire went to the 4th, Mike was already in the 5th grade. The kids at school had gotten so used to the pair that they stopped teasing. It was not interesting to tease a boy who did not give in to it and stubbornly bent his line. After Mike became a grade older, he became bolder and walked her to the apartment door. And on weekends, he'd come running to take her for a walk. Claire's mom, Pam, would answer the door. "My daughter's here to see you, Mike." And she'd let the boy into the hallway. He liked it very much if Claire lingered in her room. It meant that she was getting ready, and they would go out together. But sometimes the girl would come out in her robe. "Hey, Mike, I can't today. I've got a lot of homework to do by tomorrow. Let me help you." My friend would always offer to help, but Claire refused. One day Ben, the girl's father, opened the door. "Hello, young man. Come in, please. You know, I have a favor to ask of you. Could you keep my daughter company at our house while I go to see my wife in the hospital?" Mike nodded. "Sure. Why, is Pam sick?" "Not that sick." The man smiled. "It's just that Claire has a brother now." "Wow. Congratulations." "Oh, thank you. Do you have any brothers or sisters?" "No, my mom has one." "Well then, Steve will be your little brother in common. You and Claire are like brother and sister yourselves. You spend so much time together." The boy smiled, and Dad lowered his voice to a whisper. "She wanted to go to meet the baby too, but I talked her out of it. She's a mess with geometry. I hear you're doing well. She's distracted. Can you help me with the problems, please?" Mike began to take off his shoes. "Goodbye, young people," Dad said as he closed the door behind him. Claire was sitting at the table. "Hi, what are you doing?" Mike was surprised. "It's all because of this stupid geometry problem I can't solve, and that's why my dad didn't take me to meet my brother," she said and started rubbing her eyes with her hands. "Don't make stuff up," the boy said maturely and judiciously. "Where would he take you?" "First of all, there will be a driver in the car. Him and Mom and brother. Where's room for you? Secondly, you're a carrier of various viruses and infections. We learned that in anatomy. And newborn babies have weakened immune systems. You don't want to infect your baby brother right after he's born, do you?" Claire looked up at him with wet eyes. "That's true. Not because of geometry?" "Sure, and we're going to do geometry right now. Come on, show me the problems." When my parents and my younger brother arrived, the boys were finishing the last problem. When they heard the key turning in the lock, they ran out into the hallway. A happy Pam came in, followed by Ben with a package. "Here you go, kids. Meet our newest member of the family, Steve." Dad pulled the blanket down and pulled back the tape. Inside, a pink baby wrinkled unhappily. "Dad, put it back in the foil. See, he doesn't like it." Mike took the bags from Claire's mom and carried them into the room. Then they had tea and cake in honor of the newborn. Mom and Claire's baby brother Steve was born, shouted Mike from the doorstep, taking off his clothes. Mom quietly stepped out into the hallway and looked sadly at her son. Mike, Grandma is dead. The boy looked at his mother, not believing what she said. What? Why? What happened? The doctors said a heart attack. It took an ambulance to get to the village. They couldn't save him. Come on, let's go to the funeral. Grandma Louise was very fond of Mike. She was Mom's stepmother, but no one ever remembered that. She treated Mom like her own daughter. She had no children of her own, and she loved Mike to bits ever since he was a little girl. Grandma Louise lived in the country. She had a yard full of chickens, turkeys, ducks, and a goat. The boy would spend a month or two with her during summer vacation. He loved taking care of the birds so much that his grandmother's fellow villagers nicknamed him the Chicken Shepherd. But then in biology lessons and just in conversations with Claire and friends, the boy told many details about the life of domestic birds. His grandmother used to fry very tasty potato pies. Mike liked to sit on the steps at the entrance and eat them hot off the heat, with a crisp, buttery crust, and then drink cold milk. When the strawberries were ripe, she'd send him to the beds with a jar. Go pick strawberries, then we'll eat them with sour cream. In general, there was always plenty of cottage cheese and milk with sour cream in my grandmother's house. She bought them or changed them from neighbors for healthy goat's milk, which Mike could not tolerate. He picked a tray full of berries and brought them to the kitchen. Grandma would set aside the largest berries separately and cut the smaller ones with a knife and put them in a bowl with milk or sour cream. Sour cream, shouted the boy, and Baba Luisa mixed the berries with sour cream or poured milk, if the grandson asked with it. Then they would sit down in the yard at a wooden table, and the three of them with grandmother and mother would eat the fragrant berries. If the summer was rainy, the berry was not very sweet. They were sprinkled with sugar, but when the summer was sunny, there was nothing sweeter than strawberries. Mike ate large berries separately, not mixed with anything, but just biting and enjoying a mouthful of sweet flavor. On his last visit, Mike noticed that Grandma Louise was less digging in the garden, and more sat on a chair among the apple trees and looked around. When I die, who will fry pies and grow strawberries for you, Mike? The boy did not know how to react to such conversations and always said, Well, Grandma, what are you doing? Go on, grandson, play, and have fun. She would immediately send him away. Don't pay attention to my senile talk. And this summer, Mom and Mike planned for him to go to Baba Louise's for a couple of weeks. It never worked out. He had 2 Olympics and an orienteering competition. But he had already agreed with both his grandmother and his mother that he would go with Claire. Her parents didn't mind. Usually every morning Grandma would sit on the bench next to the wicket and say hello to the villagers who walked to the bus stop near her in the morning. When she suddenly didn't show up at her usual spot, her neighbor Nicholas got worried and went into her house. Grandma Louise was lying on the bed, wheezing and looking at him with pitying eyes. The man called an ambulance and ran through the village to look for help. A paramedic flew in, tried to give some pills and help Babushka Louisa. That morning, as luck would have it, there was a heavy downpour, and the ambulance got stuck on the way to the village. They started looking for a tractor driver, while he found one and started his car, while he pulled out the stuck car, while the doctors reached the grandmother. Time was lost. They took her to the district center, but she died on the way. They told my mom all this. When she and Mike came to organize the funeral, Grandma was lying in the coffin. Mike looked at her and couldn't take his eyes off her. He couldn't believe she wasn't going to sit up and say, Come on, you're all scared, it's okay. Come on, I'll pour you some milk. The coffin with Grandma was being lowered into the ground, when 2 tears rolled down Mike's cheek. Back in the empty grandmother's house after the wake, Mom sank heavily on the sofa. It's just you and me now, Mike. I loved Grandma Louise. I always thought my own mother would have been better than her. But now I realize that she devoted her whole life to me, helped me with everything and never asked for help or love in return. Well, let her be better off in the next world than in this one. Mom, is there an afterlife? Who knows? Believers say there is. But you and I don't believe in God much, so I don't know. But I'd like to think that we don't leave this earth without a trace, that somewhere our self remains. Baba Luisa believed that she would meet my father and her parents. God grant her that everything came true. Come on. It's too early for you to think about that. Why don't you clean up and I'll go to the neighbors? Maybe someone will take an animal or a bird. You and I can't take care of it from the city. And without people here, they'll all take a break. The villagers were surprised when their mother offered to take the bird and goat for nothing. Tiffany, you can sell all this stuff, can't you? They persuaded her. Well, when am I going to do it? The woman objected. I'm just giving it away. Just have to pick it up today so we can close up the house and leave. The chickens and turkeys were sold quickly, but nobody wanted to take the goat for a long time. They even advised to send it to the slaughterhouse. No, Mom sighed. Baba Louise wouldn't forgive that. And she went looking for another owner. Finally, there was one for the goat. Mom and Mike cleaned up the house, shut off the gas and water, and closed the house until summer. I guess we won't be coming here anytime soon. As we walked out the gate, my mother sighed. I'll be here for at least 2 weeks in the summer, as I wanted. Mike objected. You've got a good idea, don't you? How will you manage on your own? I don't have a grandmother to cook and garden. I'm not alone. I'm coming with Claire. And don't worry, if we have any problems, we can always go to the neighbors. They all know me and they'll help us. Naive simplicity. His mom patted him. Why? Well, let's see. There's still time before summer. Mike and Claire now often went for walks with Steve in the stroller. Pam had time to clean up and do laundry and take a little break from the baby. Mike really enjoyed acting like a couple. Are you and I ever going to be like this with our son? He said to his girlfriend. Mike, what are you talking about? We're still 14 years old and you're already talking about kids. No, I was just embarrassed. He was embarrassed. They will. Steve was almost always asleep. The boys talked about school and classes and teachers. When you grow up, the boy sighed, looking at the baby. We'll go down the slide with you and play catch-up. By the time he grows up, you'll be a serious uncle. Claire laughed. What's Chase? Why? Our dads used to play with us. We're not even parents. You're the sister, and I'm the sister. He hesitated. I'm almost like a brother. Claire's parents had their doubts about the children's vacation in the country, but they also wanted their daughter to have somewhere to rest while they took care of her little brother. So they went with Mike's mother, looked at the house, and agreed with a neighbor for a small fee that she would look after the children and move into the grandmother's house for 2 weeks. Wendy, the teenagers, were not bothered by her attention. She usually fed them in the morning, told them what was desirable to do, and left for her yard. Mike would decide how busy they would be and when they could go swimming in the river or look at the stars. If it suddenly rained all day, they would usually stay in the house and read a book or listen to the radio. The sun was hot that day. Mike and Claire sat on the sand next to the river. It was the village beach. I've had a bath before, the girl said. Then you sit here and I'll go swimming again. Mike ran to the water. Swimming into the middle, he suddenly saw a column of gray smoke. It was on the other side of the village, and he swam to it. Where are you going? Claire shouted to him. He showed his hand and called after him. Claire gathered her things and walked along the shore. As she came around the bend, she saw smoke too. Mike jumped ashore and ran as fast as he could. A shed was burning on the lot next to Nicholas's house. The owner himself was running around. Jack. He was yelling. Jack stayed there and wouldn't come out. Jack was a small dog of country breed, a yard dog. Her grandfather had picked her up after his son was killed while serving in the Far East. Mike grabbed some old blanket and ducked into the passage. Before Claire could yell, he appeared outside with Jack in his arms. And that's when the roof collapsed behind him. Neighbors who came to help rolled the boy with 2 buckets of cold water and began pouring and spreading boards. When the fire truck arrived, all that was left of the barn were embers, which they poured water over. Grandfather sat with Jack in his arms, stroking her and talking quietly to her. Oh, you rascal. Wendy, who had just come up, jumped on Grandpa. Why did you almost burn the boy? What kind of eyes would we be looking at his mother with? Come on, Wendy. The man excused himself. I didn't see him throwing himself into the fire. He felt sorry for Jack. But not the baby? What were you looking at? She snapped at Claire. Why did you let him in there? Baba Valya, it's okay. Mike calmed her down. Well, look, I don't have a scratch or a burn on me. and my heart hurts because of your antics. I'm too old to follow you guys around. I'm gonna tell my mother. Grandma Wendy, don't. Claire stood up for her friend. He's a hero of the fire. He wasn't afraid. He saved the dog. The villagers around him nodded. Hero, 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 hero. Don't make Mom feel sorry for him, Mike asked. Otherwise she won't let me go anywhere else alone, and she won't let me come to you. And I wanted to help. So Mike became a hero in the village. Grandpa Nicholas brought him a full bar of honey. Thank you for my Jack. I wish his father would be proud of what a hero his son is. I know his mother's gone. I won't tell. They're too sensitive, those women. But if you need anything, don't hesitate to stop by. I owe you one now. He shook the boy's hand. 2 weeks later, Ben arrived with Mike's mom. All the villagers were bringing them presents. What the hell happened here? Mom wondered. He's messed up again. But everyone smiled and said, That's a good kid you got there, Tiffany. This is for you in town. Take it. Take it. The car was filled to the brim not only with the children's things but also with offerings from the villagers. They closed up the house, took the kids, and drove to town. At home, Claire couldn't stand it and told her father everything before her mother heard. A man's growing up, Ben praised her friend. Not every adult would have taken the risk, but he didn't. He says he's irresistible, the daughter said. How's that? But he showed me tricks in the corners, went bare feet, hands directly through the fire lead, and he had no burns, no scratches. Said fire was his element, so he didn't get burned. God willing, but I wouldn't take too many chances if I were him. You keep an eye on him? I'd feel better if we didn't tell our mothers. Despite excellent studies and prizes at the Olympics, Mike left after the 8th grade in the Technical School of Railway Transport. Son, why didn't you go to the institute? Are you upset, Mom? Because I need to get on my feet as soon as possible. I'll become an electromechanic of rolling stock. Then I'll go straight to the 3rd year and learn to be an engineer. I'll be able to earn and support my family. What family? Claire and me. And help you too. Of course they're early. You're thinking about a family? My mother shook her head. What about hanging out with your friends till dawn, going out with the men? What does that have to do with getting married? The son wondered. I can do all that. Claire went to the 9th grade and planned to study automated control systems at the institute after graduation. Mike was away at school and work all day, and they began to meet with the girl less often. On weekends, the young man would come to visit and drink tea with Claire's parents, and then they would go for walks together with the grown-up Steve. Mike had money, and he helped his mother to make repairs in the apartment and gave part of his salary for food and other needs. The rest he spent on dates with Claire, going to movies and amusement parks. When by the end of the 10th grade it turned out that the girl has problems with math, he even volunteered to pay for her tutor, to get her through the entrance exams. They did not talk about it then, but Mike planned to get married after he transferred to the institute. However, the girl was surrounded by student life. She was now going out more with her friends and spending time outside the house. When Claire came to class in September, it turned out that they had more girls than guys in the group. And while at school everyone had long been divided into pairs and groups, at the institute they had to build communication all over again. Even before enrollment, when Claire complained to her mom that she had no friends, but only Mike, her mom replied, "Wait, school is not the main thing. Here you have gathered randomly, by territoriality. When you get to the institute, you will have more or less similar interests and goals. Real girlfriends, as well as friends, should be found there. It is they who remain for many years your support. There are exceptions, like your Mike, but the institute is a different level of life. You'll get to know it." Mom was right. The first semester everyone looked at each other and the teachers, but by the session it was already clear who had common interests and aspirations, as well as similar life principles. Claire became friends with Ellie and Lara. The girls were both from teaching families and they had common views on life and learning. Max joined the same group. No, he didn't hang out with his classmates all the time. He spent most of his time with other guys from the course and other faculties, but he often kept Claire and her friends company. They went to the library together, or to lunch in the cafeteria, or to the movie theater. Claire wondered if he, a couple years older than them, was interested in spending time with 3 girls. She shared her thoughts with her friends. Claire, what are you doing? Ellie was surprised. He likes you. Mark my word, he'll start courting you soon. I? Surprised, but seeing Lara nodding, she was indignant. I have Mike. Why do I need Max? Well, first of all, who's seen your Mike? Where's the proof that he's not made up? Why would I make something like that up? Claire was surprised again. To make up a price for yourself, or on the contrary, to avoid being hit on, Lara explained. But usually it doesn't work. And secondly, continued Ellie, even if you have a fiancé, he rarely shows up, but Max often. He's going to be a pain in the ass. You'll marry him yourself. And you'll forget about Mike. That can't be true. Categorically rejected the assumption, friend. And to prove it, I'll bring Mike. Of course he works and can't come here every day, but I'll try to make sure everyone sees him, especially Max. Claire was afraid to admit to herself that she liked her classmate, unlike the usual Mike. Max was unconventional in his tastes and preferences. For example, he knew the Latin names of almost all the flowers in the store, and when he presented them to her, he was sure to pronounce the names and tell the peculiarities of the plant. In the second place, he was fond of history and knew many incredible facts. Some in the group, however, thought he was making some of it up, but Claire believed the young man for some reason. Thirdly, he told tales from the life of military garrisons, as his father served in air defense, and Max had traveled a lot to military towns as a child. And, by the way, many girls liked him not only in the group, but also on the stream. But he was only close to Claire and her friends. Mike, can you come to the Institute tomorrow at about 3 o'clock? The girl asked her friend. For how long? I'm working, but I could be free for a couple of hours. A couple hours will do. I just want you to meet me. Because a lot of people think you're my imagination. Who cares what they think? You know I'm not. Mike, please. Okay, under the food. As Claire and her friends walked out of the oak doors of the Institute, there was a young man waiting on the steps. He kissed her on the cheek. Meet him, the girl said. This is Mike, and these are my friends Lara and Ellie. The friend gallantly kissed the girl's hands, then took Claire under his elbow. But where are we going tonight? Let's go home. Mom said to come over early to babysit Steve. Let's go home. And Mike took her to the bus stop. Max came up to the girls, who stayed in front of the building. This is the legendary Mike. The girls nodded. It's okay, kid, we have to make friends. And you girls and me, where are we going to go? You know, Max, we're going out tonight, okay? Lara turned him down smartly. Suit yourself. He just threw up his hands. He didn't get upset at all and went off in the direction of the other guys. The next time Mike met Claire at the Institute, Max walked up to the class by himself. Hi, I'm Max, Claire's classmate. Extended his hand to Mike. Nice to meet you. The young man shook it. Mike, Claire's friend. What do you do? I'm a night student and I work. Where? At the locomotive depot. Wow, you're a railroader. You could say that. But I'm actually an electrical engineer. Claire said you two knew each other from high school. Yeah. I graduated a year ahead of her, and I graduated 2 years ahead of her. What did you do for 2 years? Army? Oh no, I'm not going in the army. So I tried one place, then another, but I settled on the third. That's where Max pointed to the Institute building. Max, do you mind if we go? Claire asked. We still have to go to the store and home with my little brother to babysit. Sure. Have a nice day. Max waved at them. Goodbye. Which store do we have to go to? Mike asked. No store. He's just so clingy. I just said that to get rid of him. Look, he seems like a nice guy, but you should just talk to him. I'd rather hang out with the girls. Wow. That sounds like a fight, Mike smiled. But where are we going? I want ice cream. Great. Mike picked up his friend, and they went to the cafe. Can I not meet you anymore? He asked her, bringing her an ice cream, sprinkled with walnuts and covered with chocolate sauce. Of course I asked you temporarily. No offense, it's just that one of my partners got sick at work, and now we have to split his hours to keep the trains running. No offense taken. But why don't you come visit us this weekend? It's Steve's birthday. He asked if you were coming. I remember I bought him a present. I'll definitely come. Tell him so. Mike smiled. A couple of weeks later, a red rose appeared on Claire's desk during a break, clutching a piece of paper. The girl was surprised and opened the message. There isn't a day that I don't think of you. There is not an hour that I do not desire you. Who could it be? She wondered and announced the audience with a glance. No one paid any attention to her actions. Between pairs, she showed the sheet to Lara. Yes, that's Max. What makes you think that? He's always talking about poetry. Do you think he wrote it for me? I don't know. Ask him yourself. Claire took a moment to approach Max. Did you leave that flower on my desk? Yeah. And I left the leaf too. Did you write it yourself? No. It's Constantine Balmont, the best poet of the Silver Age, in my opinion. Why did you do that? To show that I like you. But you know I have a boyfriend, replied the girl. I know. And he dedicates poems to you. Even if it's someone else's, but I can write my own. I'm sure you can. But you kept your gift for someone else. Don't you like me at all? But why are you good? Interesting, funny, but I've been given to someone else. Remember? It's a school program. I remember. It's not like I'm asking for anything in return, the boy said. From that time on, Claire began to have poems about love by known and unknown authors. They were handwritten, typed, or simply cut out of a magazine. The girl read them with pleasure and sometimes looked at the person who left her these messages. Ellie invited the whole group to her house for her birthday. Some couldn't make it, but the main core gathered. There were sprat sandwiches, stuffed eggs, Soviet champagne, and lots of sweetbread for tea. Max wooed Claire all evening and then volunteered to walk her out. She agreed. They walked through the spring town in the evening twilight. Max read Claire a poem about love from memory. She repeated some lines, but most of them were a revelation to her. How do you know so many poems? I like them. They have rhythm, and you can make up music. And then they express exactly what I want to say to you. And what's that? I love you, Claire. You're the best girl in the universe. Max turned her toward him and began kissing her lips, forehead and neck passionately. Claire resisted, but she was sluggish. The young man sensed this, and when she responded to his kiss, he exclaimed, I knew it. I knew you liked me. We're so good together. We understand each other. Marry me. But... The girl tried to object. No buts. I can feel you melting in my arms. Do you want me to? Let's get married. We'll be the best couple ever. Do you want me to give you love? Claire was in doubt. After the evening with Max, she realized that she had fallen in love with him, with this bright guy, unusual, who knew a lot of poetry and was so romantic. She pondered how to tell Mike that their relationship was over. We weren't in a relationship at all, she excused herself. He'd never kissed me so passionately. Just a kiss on the cheek, nothing more. Never. My body never felt so attracted to him. He'd made it up for himself in elementary school, and I'd gone along with it. But then Max came along and went against all the laws of nature and took me with him. What's there to think about? I just had to say yes, and that was it. But it wasn't that easy. Claire realized that if she told Mike that she had fallen in love with another man, she would lose her best friend, with whom she had spent half of her life. It was very sad, but her youth and desire demanded sacrifices, and the girl made them. Mike, you've always been my best friend, my protector and support. You've helped me in difficult situations, and I can always rely on you. Mike tensed. The girl's voice rang very unusually, and she kept hiding her eyes. But our dream of a family will not come true. I fell in love with another man. She exhaled. He asked me to marry, and I agreed. Claire said the last words in a high-pitched voice. Mike was silent. You're not going to say anything. What can I say? Mike sighed and looked at her. You're so beautiful when you're in love, it's breathtaking. But alas, I'm not the reason for that. As they say, you can't make love by force. Be happy, Claire. It's a pity our fairy tale ended before it began. The young man kissed his friend goodbye on the cheek and left. Claire stayed at the entrance. A gray void was developing inside her. There seemed to be something there, but it was like there was nothing there anymore. She was hurt that Mike had reacted so calmly to it. Didn't go for details, didn't yell betrayal. He just turned and walked away. At least now I'm free for Max, she thought. And that thought went away at once. Tears rolled to her eyes. and she let herself smile dreamily. "Look, are you sure?" Ellie asked her, when Claire told her friends about the upcoming gala. "Well, of course, we've already applied with him," she replied happily. "What about your Mike? You didn't rush into it." "With Mike I talked. He understood everything and let me go." "I knew it," Lara sighed. "All these fairy tales that first love is for life. No one ever said Mike was my first love. The first and real one is Max. I get all mushy when he's around. Maybe it's just passion. Passion is love." "Well, I don't know. I think you're in a hurry. You should at least look at him or sleep with him a couple times. What if you two aren't sexually compatible? I want him so bad, I know I do." "We will," Claire said confidently. "There's a rumor going around that your Max has a bad eye." Ellie looked at her friend, surprised. "What do you mean, bad eye?" "Well, if he says something bad, it's bound to come true." "What are you, like ancient old women who believe in all sorts of nonsense?" "We don't," Lara corrected her. "We just wanted to warn you. Thanks, of course, but I don't believe in it. That's up to you. But we were right that you'd dump your Mike as soon as Max got in your face. That's what happened. I don't mind. I guess I could see it from the outside." As Claire watched her fiancé, she noticed that if he swore at someone, it was always someone who was in trouble. For example, the teacher who refused to give Max a credit for a poorly done term project, a day later broke his arm, and the secretary in the dean's office, after not letting the young man for a certificate, after hours slipped in the street and limped for a long time. I think it's all a coincidence. Claire was restraining herself. I'm looking for cases like this on purpose and fitting them to Ellie's words. It's just a coincidence. He remembers a lot of poetry, knows a lot of history, and is very attractive as a man. And trouble happens to everyone, especially since the groom's behavior was exemplary. He did not pressurize his bride in anything and easily agreed to help her on any matter. This time Max went shopping with Claire and helped her pick out dresses and shoes. Then they looked for a beige suit that fit the groom like a glove. "Now let's go celebrate our purchases at the restaurant," the young man suggested. Mike, of course, told his mom about Claire's wedding. She too was upset and thought of something to distract her son from sad thoughts. "You know, Mike, I've decided to sell my grandmother's house, but it needs a little sprucing up. Could you go over there and take a look at the roof and the walls and the rest of the place?" "Sure, Mom, I'll go this weekend. I got a lot of free time now." "Mike, it's you, Wendy," peeking through the door of the hut. "I'm Grandma Wendy, me." "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. What are you doing?" "My mom wants to sell the house. I'm going to fix it up a little bit. Do you know any buyers? Some vacationers came by the other day and asked. I'll tell them this one's for sale. Why are you alone? Where's your anger, Claire? She ain't my Grandma Wendy no more. She's getting married. And not to me." Mike told her sadly. "Oh, how could that be? It can't be. But why can't it be? She fell in love with another man. And because, dear Mike, while you were here with her, I guessed at you. And by all accounts, you should be husband and wife. That's what the cards told me." "Grandma Wendy, what kind of superstition is that?" "What cards? It's life, you can't predict it. That's how you all feel. But my fortune-telling has never failed me. So you two are meant to be together, period." "Well, thank you, Grandma Wendy, for the good news. I'm going to get on with my business, and I'm going to go see what my cards have to say." As Mike was about to leave for town, Grandma Wendy came in again. "Well, honey, my charts don't lie. So keep an eye on your Claire. She's going to come running to you as soon as something happens to her." "She will." "Okay, sweetie." "All right, Grandma Wendy. Thanks for your kind words, but goodbye. I'll be back. Come on, Mike. Say hi to Tiffany's mom." As Mike rode the train, he couldn't get his mind off the fortune-telling. He tried to think about other things, but he kept coming back to the conversation. When he got home, he decided to call Claire and ask how she was doing. "Everything's fine," the girl answered. "Max and I are going to a restaurant near the ponds. You know, I just left my shopping at home for 5 minutes and then you called. How'd you feel? Are you guys planning on celebrating at this restaurant?" "No. We bought a dress and a suit, so we thought we'd celebrate." "Well, have a nice evening." Mike hung up. "What are you doing, Grandma Wendy, messing with my head?" "They're fine. They're going out to restaurants." But the young man decided to walk past the ponds anyway. Did he want to see his ex-girlfriend? Or did he just decide to take a walk and think? He wouldn't be able to answer that question for himself. But as Mike began to walk toward the structure, he saw some commotion and smoke. He ran closer. The smoke was coming from the back of the restaurant. Mike saw Max running away alone. "Where's Claire?" He rushed over to the guy. "I don't know," he shrugged. "It's all up in smoke. She must have gotten lost." Mike ducked into the pond and ran into the building. The smoke stung, their eyes were slick, and the guy could only see silhouettes. Finally, he heard Claire's voice, rushed over there, grabbed her arm and practically carried her outside on his own. Then he gently laid the gasping girl on the lawn. He himself took another dive into the pond to put out his clothes and cool his head. When he came out of the water, Max and the EMTs were already standing near Claire. Nearby, firefighters were putting out the building with hoses. "Where are you taking her?" the groom asked the doctors. "To the second burn unit." They answered him. Mike didn't come up, went home to wash and dry off. Claire was lying in her room, staring at the ceiling. She kept replaying in her mind the events of yesterday and could not understand how it happened that it was Mike who pulled her out and not Max. She remembered that clearly. But how had he gotten there? Well, he did say he was irresistible. She smiled in thought. "A girl to visit you." A nurse came into the room. "Mike." Claire cheered. But Max walked through the door. "Hi, honey. How are you feeling?" Claire turned away. "Go away. I don't want to see you." "What are you doing, sweetheart? I'm worried enough as it is. You were the first one to escape during the fire and you didn't even help me out? No, you're remembering it all wrong. Who was next to you when the paramedics arrived?" "You were. See? I pulled you out and put you down so the doctors could examine you. You're lying to me. I remember you ran away and then I came back for you." "No, it wasn't you. Who else could have gotten you out?" "It was Mike. But think about it. Where would he have come from?" "I don't know. But if it was you, why don't you tell me where you found me?" "Where did you find me?" "At the table we were sitting at." "That's not true. I went from there to the exit, and whoever actually carried me out was by the kitchen door. And you don't remember that I took your hand. I remember I had to get my bag, and instead of waiting, you left me and ran away. I remember that too. And my life is more important to me than any documents, and more important than mine," Claire continued. "There's no way you'd go back into the fire. Go away. Don't show up again. I realize you're upset, but it'll pass. You'll be discharged, and we can be together like before. Max is on his way out. We'll never be like we used to be," Claire thought as she watched the door close behind him. While she was in the hospital, her parents came to visit. Ellie and Lara came by. Max never showed up again, which she was glad about. But it was frustrating that Mike wasn't there either. Every day, however, she received packages of water and fruit. There were no notes or clues. But Claire thought it was her friend who was preparing them for her. Why doesn't he come in himself, she wondered. "Daddy, did Mike come to see you?" she asked her father one day. "Mike. You guys broke up, don't you have amnesia? You were going to marry Max, weren't you?" "I remember," sighed the daughter. "It was in another life. I made a mistake, but it's not too late for you to admit it." He smiled. "When you get out of the hospital, you can tell Mike all about it. You know, Dad, I think he's the one who got me out of that restaurant." "Mike, how?" "You know, I was alone. I couldn't even scream. And there's people and smoke and even fire. And then somebody grabs me by the arm, puts me on his shoulders and carries me out. He was so pleasantly cool in the middle of this heat. And then he laid me down on the grass, saw me breathing, and walked away. Look, honey, maybe you just imagined it in the smoke. Maybe it was Max. No, Daddy, it wasn't Max. He ran away in the first few minutes and left me. Oh my God. Well, I guess it's all for the best. It's a good thing you didn't marry him." "Yeah. But Mike. What about Mike? You're not sure it was him. Maybe you were imagining it. Besides, how could he know you were there?" "I'm sure," Claire said firmly. "He called when I came home to drop off my things. I told him where we were going. I just don't understand why he never once came to check on me. And who hands you bags of fruit and water every day? You don't have many other admirers." Ben looked at his daughter thoughtfully. Mike wasn't home when the doorbell rang. Who could it be? Tiffany wondered, and went to open the door. Claire's father stood on the doorstep. "Hello, Tiffany. May I come in?" The woman was surprised. "Please come in, you and I are aware," the man began, "that our children broke up at Claire's initiative." Tiffany nodded. Then Ben shocked her. Her daughter had been hospitalized. Tiffany splayed out her hands. "But you heard about the fire at the restaurant by the ponds, right? So she was there?" "Yeah, with her fiancé, they carried her out. But she doesn't want to hear about Max now. Claims Mike saved her." "Mike? He didn't tell me anything. I figure even if it was him, he's still not going to tell me. But I have a favor to ask of you. Could you talk to your son? Tell him Claire's in the hospital. What if he doesn't know? She's really looking forward to seeing him." "All right, I'll talk to him, Ben. But you know he's got a mind of his own. So I can't be sure of the outcome." Mike came home after his shift and showered, planning to go straight to bed. But he didn't. His mom was waiting for him in the doorway of his room and called him in for a talk. When the two of them sat down on the couch, his mom handed him a mug of tea and asked, "Have you seen Claire lately, son?" Mike was embarrassed. "A long time." He answered evasively, comforting himself in his thoughts with the fact that time was relative and sometimes even minutes without his favorite girl seemed like an eternity to him. "Did you know she was in the hospital?" Mike wanted to lie, but he couldn't. "I know." "Then why didn't you go see her? She's your friend, after all. Just because she chose someone else can't undo all the years you've been together. I didn't think she'd be very happy to see me." "Why are you deciding for her? You should go see it." "Well, Mom, it hurts to be rejected, and it's better to live in the unknown. It's up to you, of course. But if I were you, I'd definitely go." Claire sat by the window and watched the birds flitting from the neighboring tree to the aspen. She pondered how to build her life when all around her all plans were canceled and uncertainty lay ahead. At that moment the door to the ward opened. The girl, more out of habit than in expectation of someone, turned her head and her heart beat desperately. Standing in the doorway was Mike with a bag of fruit and water. "Hi," he said hello embarrassedly. "How are you feeling?" "Hi. Good." Claire smiled happily at him. "They promised to discharge me in 2 days. That's really good." Mike came over and put the bag on the nightstand. "Here's one for you." Claire looked into it curiously. "So does that mean you were bringing these passes?" "Yeah." "Why didn't you come?" "I thought you didn't want to see me. So, how do you save me?" "I didn't care that much. You know it's me. Who else would it be?" "Max." I was out of my mind, but not out of my head. Although Dad and Mom thought I had amnesia when I said your name. Mike smiled. "And you don't have it?" "You too." "No, I remember crawling toward the kitchen door. Then you showed up. I wanted to call out to you, but I couldn't. It's strange because I didn't know where to look for you, but then I heard your voice, so I went straight to the kitchen, saw someone's hand through the smoke and realized it was yours. So I grabbed you and ran out." "And then where did you disappear to?" "I went for a dip to put my clothes out." "Irrepressible only me, not my pants," smiled the young man. "And when you came out of the water, next to you and the fiancé was, and the doctors. So I didn't go near them. No, I don't have a fiancé anymore. I kicked Max out. He's a coward and I won't marry him." "What about me?" Mike asked. "It's a proposal." "Claire, but you've known since 2nd grade, right? Come closer." Max came close to the bed. The girl got up, wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the lips. "Is that the answer?" asked the young man. She nodded. "Only let's agree that you will come to my house and propose in front of my parents. And Steve hasn't seen you for a long time. He keeps asking about you. You used to call him your brother, by the way. But that was for your own peace of mind. Peace of mind, remember? You spoke in poetry, like Max. You know, there's something to be learned from everyone," Claire said. "I've learned that you can use quotes and poems to make yourself look smart. Just don't forget to live with your own mind. And that's the one thing he didn't get. Well, let's not talk about him. Let's talk about you. Where have you been all this time? Working, studying. My mom decided to sell Grandma Louise's house. So I've been going there, fixing it up. How's life there?" "Grandma Wendy couldn't believe we broke up. She said I looked at the cards. You two should be together. I thought she was just kidding or calming me down. But she was right. Grandpa Nicholas died. First Jack, and a couple months later the owner couldn't stand the loneliness. But Grandma Wendy's doing surprisingly well and looking after the farm. She came to see me and said hi to my mom. You know what? When I get out of here, why don't we go to the country for a week? Can you take a vacation? Well, I can arrange it. What will we do there? Nothing. I'll rest and recuperate. The doctor just said I need to breathe clean air after carbon monoxide poisoning. So we'll go. Otherwise, you'll sell the house and have nowhere to go. At Claire's discharge, Mike came with her parents and Steve, and also with a large bouquet of flowers. You like chrysanthemums, don't you? He said, holding out a bouquet of white balloons to her. Claire covered her face in them. After they drove up to Claire's house, her parents did not let Mike go anywhere, but made him drink tea in honor of their daughter's discharge. Truth be told, he was in no hurry to leave either. Steve had hardly left his side, having missed him a lot. When the first joy of Claire's home had subsided, the young man went out into the hallway and returned from there with a small box. He coughed. Dear Pam and Ben, I am asking for your daughter's hand in marriage. He handed the box to the girl, who opened it and put the ring on her finger. By the way, I already said yes. She teased her parents. So no refusal is accepted. Claire's father stood up and shook Mike's hand. You know we've always treated you like a son. I'm all for it. Welcome to our family. When do you plan to register? We think, my daughter replied, that tomorrow we'll go and apply, and then we'll go to the country for a week. Mike, to the country? Repeated Mom. Yes, Mike nodded. Mom wants to sell the house, so we thought we'd take one last vacation. Who knows? Especially since the doctor told Claire to get some fresh air. You're going away again? Steve was upset. No offense. When your sister and I get married, you'll get tired of me. I'll never get sick of you, Claire's brother said. Steve, don't pick on Mike. Mom pulled him back. Maybe I want to go to the country too. He got cranky. Well, then you and I will go, his father promised him. I'll talk to Mom. Maybe she won't be in a hurry to sell the house just yet. When Mike and Claire went into the house, it smelled damp. Claire was so tired that she went straight to bed. Mike opened all the windows to let in fresh air. Then he began to unpack and was about to go to the village store to get bread. At that moment, there was a knock at the window. Who's there? Mike asked softly, not wanting to wake the girl who had just fallen asleep. It's me, Grandma Wendy, the old woman whispered to him. Mike went out on the porch. You're not alone, are you? No, with Claire. Claire's okay then. Yeah, Grandma Wendy, your guess is right, don't worry. Except she's been through a lot and she's been in the hospital. So she's resting now and I don't want to bother her. Well, let her rest. Well, there's been hardships and there will be hardships. You get used to it. The main thing is that you're together. You two shouldn't be afraid of anything. Thank you, Grandma Wendy. I'm going to go to the village store. Come on, honey, I'm not bothering you. Can I bring you some milk tonight? Come in, Grandma Wendy, for tea with the hotels tonight. That's great. Thank you. The old woman came out of the wicket with Mike and went the other way. Now, my children. Baba Wendy sat at the table and drank tea and candy with pleasure. And this one threw another poem. A difficult life awaits you. But you, the main thing is to stick together, and then you won't get caught. And who of us had a simple fate? The old lady put another candy in her mouth. We don't believe in that kind of fortune-telling, Grandma Wendy told her Claire. It's like a new religion. You used to believe in God, now you believe in cards. Well, that's up to you. If you don't want to believe in it, don't. I'm just doing this for my own peace of mind. You're almost like family to me. So I'm worried about your future, which I won't live to see. Don't worry. Mike poured more tea for the woman. We'll be fine. Won't we, love? Of course, Mike, smiled Claire. Before going to bed, the young man put Claire on her grandmother's big bed and went to make himself comfortable on the sofa in the living room. Where are you going? The girl was surprised. Now myself a bed in style. Why? I think there's enough room for the two of us on the bed. She patted the sheet with her palm. Come here. When Mike sat down next to her, she put her arms around her fiancé's neck, stared into his eyes for a long time, and then brought her lips close to his. Mike was holding back with all his might. The girl realized it. "We're already together, so let's be together until the end." And she touched his face with her lips. Mike wrapped his arms around her and kissed her face and hands. Claire guided his kisses and then began to undress. Mike took off his shirt as well. They didn't fall asleep until just before morning. Tired, but so happy that even the morning birds chirping couldn't wake them up. Claire woke up with a feeling of happiness. Sunlight streamed through the curtain and the breeze tickled her face. Next to her slept Mike with a blissful smile. The girl quietly started to rise, but then the young man grabbed her hand and pulled her to him. She gave in, and they made love again, greeting the new day in this way. Finally, Mike forced himself to get up and go to the kitchen. He got a glass of water and brought Claire the pills she needed to drink. "Lie down, my love." He kissed her. "I'll make us some breakfast." When Mike told his mother the whole story of his renewed relationship with Claire and his proposal, he also mentioned that the girl needed fresh air. Even then, Tiffany thought that maybe she shouldn't sell the house. And when the matchmakers came to visit, they discussed it over tea and decided to let it stay for the time being. "Besides, we'll be able to send Steve there with them so he doesn't have to spend his vacations in the city too," Ben said. "And we'll take care of their provision and the house payment." "Thanks. But here I am thinking, where will the young ones live? Maybe we have 3 rooms for 3 people, and you have 5. Claire's parents agreed. While the kids were resting, they remodeled Mike's den into a real nice bridal suite with a big bed and closet. "I hope they like it," Ben said, putting the finishing touches on the room with a coffee table and a mirror. The boys were happy, and it wasn't too soon for us to be living together. Claire was suddenly embarrassed. "And with your mom. Would you want us to live with your parents only after we're married?" "But no, it just happened so fast. Oh, I wish I could stay in the village. I felt like an adult there. And you are an adult, and soon you'll be my wife." Mike hugged his wife and pushed the bed. "Would you like to try it?" "I do, of course I do." She, laughing, pulled him along with her. When Claire returned to her studies, the first thing that surrounded her were fellow students asking her about her health and well-being. "Thanks, guys, I'm fine. Thanks for the broadcasts and the notes. The doctor said that everything will pass without consequences." "Let's sit down after class for coffee and ice cream," Ellie suggested. "I'd love to. I have some news for you." "About you calling off the wedding?" "We already know that." "No, not that. But I'll tell you at the cafe. They got their favorite chocolate chip malt with pecans and chocolate sauce." "So," began Claire, as soon as they were seated at the table, "there's going to be a wedding." "How did you two make up after all?" Lara exclaimed. "Of course we did. We love each other. And you're not afraid? Why have I known him for so many years? He has always remained faithful to me. I love him. And what a week we spent together in the country. Better than any movie honeymoon." "With who?" "With Max in the country." "But what's Max got to do with it?" "Mike, of course. Mike and I made up, and he proposed. And I said yes. And by the way, we're already living together in his mom's apartment. But we have our own room with a big bed." "And Max?" "What about Max? He knows poetry and history and everything. He's such a gallant boy, but he's a coward. Why would I want a man who's afraid of everything? I turned him down when I was in the hospital, even though he saved your life." "Who's Max?" "Yeah. He was the first one out of the restaurant. He even dumped me." "What?" "And he tells everyone what a hero he is, how he pulled you out of the fire. And you, ungrateful fool, you hurt your head afterwards and decided to break up with him. Well, he's a good storyteller. But he's lying through his teeth. And if he finds out you're getting married, he might do something to you. I'm not afraid of him. I have a real protector now. With Mike, I'm safe with Max." Claire told her friends about her vacation in the country and the new room her parents had made for them. "We're getting married in June right after the session," she told her friends. "And don't you dare go anywhere. You're invited." At one of the last classes, the girl found a folded sheet of paper on her desk after recess. She unfolded it and read, "Dark alley and footsteps. Sleeping peacefully on a country day off. Someone with a tone of voice asks, 'Help.' The knife glittered, and then silence. Claire stared. Everyone was looking at their notes. Max wasn't in the classroom. He hadn't been in class much lately, and the guys said he'd decided to quit the institute and go into business. Her friends were discussing what a stupid move it was, but Max had left their company long ago. Claire put the sheet in her notebook and forgot about it. Returning home at the first hour of the morning after the evening shift, Mike walked along the narrow passage between the houses, which he had walked 1,000,000 times before. Suddenly he heard footsteps behind him. A passerby just like me, he thought, and walked on, still listening a little to the sounds behind him. The footsteps quickened. Then the man ran. Mike stopped and turned to face the man running. He pulled his hood over his head and reached into his pocket, a knife glinting in his hand. "Give me the money," he wheezed. "I don't have it," Mike said peacefully, not wanting to get into an argument. "You expect me to believe that? I'd give it to you if you did. I'll check it out." The shadow loomed menacingly over him. Mike tried to resist, but suddenly the assailant stabbed him with a knife. The young man slumped to the pavement. The robber searched his pockets and, finding nothing of interest to him, quickly fled. "Help!" Mike moaned and lost consciousness. Claire learned of the incident when the house was called and Tiffany answered the phone. "Claire!" she shouted. The girl ran out and picked up the woman and the phone, trying to be as calm as possible. Claire found out from the caller what had happened, where Mike was now and where to come. "It's not that bad," she tried to reassure his mom. "I'll go to the hospital and find out. And you stay at home." The girl called her father, who had a car, and he immediately came to pick up his daughter. Tiffany went with them, but only Claire and Tiffany and Ben were allowed to see the patient. They stayed in the car. The police officer had told them over the phone that he was making his rounds when he came across Mike unconscious. He had all his papers on him, so the police had no trouble finding the relatives after they sent the victim to the hospital. When Mike regained consciousness, he saw leaning over him his favorite girl. "Claire," he smiled. "Shh. Don't talk. You're in the hospital. You were attacked, remember?" Mike nodded. "The police know. They're looking for your attacker. And I'm with you. So don't worry about it. What about the wedding? We've got plenty of time. You'll get out and we'll get married." She kissed him on the cheek. Sitting on a park bench with the girls, Claire pulled out the note she had received a few days earlier. "Look, Lara and Ellie read a quatrain. Oh, wow. Do we have a fortune teller or something? Or a criminal who warns of intentions? Or maybe just a sick person? But I'd put such a sick person in a cell with bars." Claire was angry. What if he did? Maybe someone knew there would be an attack. But how? Unless he prepared it himself. Look, what if it was Max? Lara's guess. He has a reason, and he knows how to rhyme. And how could he know what time and when Mike comes back? In general, girls, all this is inexplicable to me, but scary. I can't wait till Mike gets better. Then I'll tell him everything. He'll figure out what to do. While Mike was recovering, the police investigated, but they never found anyone. When they asked the young man if he had received any threats, he shook his head in surprise. Claire wanted to tell them about the note, but then changed her mind. She decided to show it to Mike first, and if he decided, she would take it to the police. When Mike checked out and went to work, one evening Claire put a note on his bed. "Look, I got this at the institute, a couple days before you were attacked." Mike reread it several times, then looked up at his fiancée. "Who did you get it from?" Claire shrugged. "It showed up on my desk after the break. No outsiders seem to have come in and no one knows where it came from." "Did you show it to the police?" "No. I thought I'd tell you first. I think we should take this to the coroner. They came with a note at the police station. The investigation is closed," they said. "But the culprit hasn't been found, has he?" "No, but he didn't steal anything. And the fact that he stabbed me doesn't count. That's what we've been doing, but there's no sign of him." "Well, then here's the evidence." The coroner read the piece of paper. "What's this?" "Claire told us the story behind the note. Why didn't you tell us about it in the first place?" "I wanted Mike to see it first. So we're going to have to reopen the case. First, I'll come to your institute and interview the group. I've asked around. No one's seen it. Do you have any idea who might have lied to you? I don't see the point. I don't see the point in writing such notes. After all, someone wanted to scare you, and they did. But the new investigation didn't turn up anything either. Maybe it's just a coincidence? Mike shrugged. There's no such thing, Claire answered confidently. But something like this does happen, dear. Claire found the next note in her bag. How long it had been there she didn't know. On a rainy day you shouldn't go near the pond without an umbrella. When the rains sweep the grass off the slope, the water can get muddy. Claire didn't understand anything. She had never been to the pond. She tried not to go out in the rain. A couple of weeks later, a summer downpour caught them with their girlfriends. When leaving their favorite cafe, they covered themselves with bags and ran along the path home. And at that time, a small stream of mud and branches came down the slope. If it had been bigger, they would have called it Salim. But it was so small that Lara and Ellie jumped over it with ease. Claire, on the other hand, stumbled and literally fell into a puddle. She was both amused and hurt at the same time. I'm clumsy and I got my skirt dirty. Now I'll have to wash it. How am I going to get home looking like this? I'll give Mike a heart attack. Come on, we'll walk you home. Her friends helped Claire clean up a little and took her home. Already at home, when she was packing her clothes and her bag, a piece of paper fell out of it. Claire reread it. No way. She crouched on the edge of the bathtub, but it couldn't be faked. When Mike came home from work, she told him the story and showed him the note. I was laughing until I remembered it at home, the girl admitted honestly. I feel like I'm being haunted by a psychic. I think someone just wants to scare you. I'll tell you what. You don't read any more notes that you don't know where you're coming from. I will. If you see an unfamiliar piece of paper, just throw it in the trash like it never happened. Then you won't dwell on it. Claire thought about it and agreed. From then on, she really did throw away every unfamiliar piece of paper that was on her desk, in her bag, or anywhere near it. Even letters with an obscure return address in the mailbox she also threw away without opening. It was the price of her own peace of mind and anxiety. And the fears did recede. The end of June was approaching. More and more of their time was spent preparing for the wedding. Claire did not want to go to the wedding in a white dress, remembering the one she had bought with Max, so she preferred a blue one embroidered with flowers. Mike bought himself a gray suit. Ben helped organize the small banquet hall and arranged for the food and waitresses. Lara and Ellie promised to order a 4-tiered wedding cake, as their friends put it. Claire still hoped it wouldn't be so flashy, though, just before the wedding. A week before, the sad news came from the village that Grandma Wendy had died. The whole family went to the funeral. It was as if the old woman knew she was dead. In her house there were pillowcases full of things. Each one had a note pinned to it with a name on it. Who the pillowcase was meant for. That's how Mike got the keys to another house. Grandma Wendy had no relatives. Claire had a pink floral pillowcase there too. There was some jewelry and a handkerchief. One white brooch matched the wedding dress perfectly, and Claire had set it aside for the ceremony. In addition, there was a card with a teddy bear in the pillowcase. On the back it said, "It's going to be hard, but Mike will always get through it with you. Love." Tears came to Claire's eyes. Although she didn't believe in fortune-telling, she took more cards. The wedding was both simple and a lot of fun. Besides her parents and Steve, there were Claire's friends, Mike's shift, and other good acquaintances, including those from the Institute. There was lots of fun, contests, toasts, and even more delicious food. For music, Father Ben brought a record player and vinyl records from home. Everyone danced to Sametsvedi and Radzinski. Tiffany didn't get confused and made her own pierogi recipe. Ellie and Lara brought a cake with 2 tiers, above which was a lake with swans bowing their heads in the shape of a heart. There were so many presents that they were all put in one corner. And then Claire, the father drove them in a car in 3 trips to the apartment of Tiffany and the Newlyweds. After the celebration and outings, the young now husband and wife returned to their room and collapsed on the bed, tired from the impressions and craziness of the last few days. "But how do you like lying on your back and not even undressed?" asked Claire the husband. "It was great. Of course, we will have many more pleasant moments in our lives, but these are the ones I will remember. And when we get the pictures printed, I'll hang them here." She pointed to the wall above the mirror. "I'll put them here on the nightstand and take them to the village, to grandmother's houses. Let even our grandchildren know how happy we were with you that day. But in order for us to have grandchildren, we will have to make an effort." Mike started to take off his shirt. "Would you give me a hand?" Of course, his wife threw herself at him with readiness and laughter. "Only then, it will be your turn." They took off each other's holiday clothes and climbed under the blanket. Now they felt quite liberated. But because they were very tired, they could not indulge in pleasure for long and quickly fell asleep. In honor of the wedding, Mike was given a weekend at work, and he and his young wife went to the village to worship the grandmother's graves and just show familiar villagers, already as husband and wife. Claire had to wear a wedding dress again, and Mike a suit. They walked around the village and invited everyone to tea. The people in the village turned out to be few, but everyone who knew them as children came and brought gifts for the village: generous pickles, honey, dried mushrooms, and a big golden samovar. "All that's left is to learn how to brew it," Mike joked. They remembered the days and nights after Claire and the discharge. Again they woke to the sound of dragonflies and made love until they were exhausted. Toward the end of the week, Dad came to pick up the newlyweds. "But thank God all the presents can be taken away in one trip," he exclaimed. "Will we still go in there?" shyly asked his daughter. "No, my dear, but you'll take the train, won't you? Because look, how spoiled." "Well, Daddy," Claire looked at Ben with compassion, "that woman is making ropes out of me." He turned to his son-in-law. "She'll do the same trick to you, or she'll do the same trick to you." They drove back in a car full of village preparations and souvenirs. Of course, they left the samovar and other kitchen utensils in the house to be used on their next visits. However, even without them, the old car was sitting on its rear wheels and roaring with its engine. "Well, son-in-law?" My father-in-law turned to Mike. "It's time for you to take a course. We'll drive a car together because I'm the only driver for two families. It's time to raise a new man." "I'd love to," Mike smiled. "You know I like machinery." "Well, it's a deal." Ben tapped the steering wheel lightly and stepped on the gas. In front of the house, he unloaded all the stuff into the street, and while Claire looked after it, he and Mike carried the presents into the house. Of course, the daughter couldn't help but leave some of the snacks for her parents and brother, so in small batches she put them from the pile in the front seat so her dad wouldn't see them while he carried the rest upstairs. "All right, darlings, happy married life, and I'm off to my place." Ben hugged the youngsters goodbye and got behind the wheel. "What the hell is that?" he shouted out the open window. "And this, Daddy, is for Mommy and Steve. Let them have a treat, too. We can't eat that much anyway." "Oh, you're such a fox, Claire. Daddy felt so sorry for me. But I'm not taking it now. I'll drive you home." And Daddy's car pulled out of the yard. "Are we going to sort out the presents?" Claire came home from school and Mike had the day off. They took chairs and sat down near the corner where boxes, packages, and just greeting cards were stacked. Of course, the largest box contained a dinner set for 6 with a dish and a tureen. Claire was delighted and carried it into the kitchen. "Don't we have any plates?" Tiffany was outraged. "But these are so pretty, so save them for the party. You don't want to ruin a good thing." So Claire put all the dishes in the cupboard. Then they looked at the embroidered linens, which were called wedding linens. Here the girl did not ask anyone and divided it at once on the bed. There was also a Chinese big thermos of maroon color with peacocks drawn on it. A set of tablecloths and napkins Claire put with the service, and the guys got confused and gave the newlyweds a battery-operated transistor. Mike put it on the nightstand next to the bed. The bride's parents presented a black and white TV, but it was not brought to the wedding, and immediately placed the newlyweds at home. It was time to sort through the envelopes of money and cards. Claire opened each envelope, looked at the card, read the greeting, and put it on the shelf. The boys put the money in a separate box, hoping to find a good use for it later. "Oh, look, this one's unsigned." Claire showed her husband a plain white envelope. It contained a card with 2 doves and a ring. Completely blank. There was no money either. Claire opened the card and a folded piece of paper with typed text fell out. "Just a moment to oblivion, and there will be cries of chaos. Everything is up in smoke. One of you will die before Sunday. The other will envy him." Claire commanded and held out the envelope to Mike. It was him again. The young man reread the text several times. Could it be someone's bad joke? But who could joke like that? It was a private wedding. And the gifts were given to us personally. I don't remember anyone giving us an empty white envelope. And I don't remember what's going to happen, Mike. It says someone dies before Sunday, which means we only have a week to live." The girl burst into tears. Mike frantically thought about what to do with his wife and the letter. Somebody's just trying to scare us, but everything he's written before has come true. We don't know if they all did or not. You only read 2 messages and the rest were thrown out. Maybe they didn't come true. I mean, nothing bad happened to us. But Grandma Wendy died. Look, she was an old person. We all die sometime. It's awful, but it's inevitable. Mike, I'm scared. Good. Then let's go to the police and file a death threat. Who's threatening you? Asked the police officer. Here. Mike handed him a piece of paper. The lieutenant read the text. So? It's the envelope we got at the wedding. By who? We don't know how, but they put it in our gifts. So you weren't given it personally? No. Young people, you're confusing your statements. But even if it's as you say, I don't see the threat. It's just a poem, maybe a quote or a warning. What makes you think you're getting death threats all of a sudden? But remember, Mike's been attacked before, and there was a letter like this. It can't be a coincidence. Why not? Let's think about it logically. When was your wedding? The 23rd? Last Friday. That's when the envelope was placed, I guess so. Sunday was the 25th. Today is the 28th. And you're both alive and looking well as far as I can see. What makes you think it's about this coming weekend? It doesn't say anything specific. Then no one says you're the ones who'll be up in smoke. And the fact that someone will die before Sunday, so we will all die before some Sunday, except for those who will die on that day. The policeman smiled. Take your paper and keep it for many years as a family heirloom. Congratulations on your marriage. Have a nice day. Mike tapped himself on the forehead as they walked out of the stronghold. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? He's right. It's been one Sunday already, and nothing happened, and there's nothing terrible about the letter. It's just a bad joke. Besides, remember what Grandma Wendy told us. If you're together, everything's gonna be okay. And who are we supposed to believe? An angry anonymous person, or our favorite grandma? Then I'll throw this out. Claire walked resolutely to the trash can. No, don't. Mike stopped her by the arm and took the sheet from the girl. We'll put it in some not very interesting book and let it lie there. In 30 years, we'll take it out and laugh together. Only in a book that I won't soon come across it. The incident with the note left an unpleasant impression, but it was soon smoothed out by the troubles, studies, and work. After graduation, Claire stayed on as a teaching assistant in the department. She was even allocated her own desk, where she put wedding photos. And 6 months later, the girl became pregnant. When the boy was born, Mike suggested, let's call him Richard. Just a beautiful name, noble, such as the Roman emperor. And so the young family welcomed Richard, the tomboy. Like any boy, he went with abrasions on his knees, periodically came home with a bruised eye or swollen nose. What kind of misfortune is this? Tiffany's grandmother wailed as she greeted her grandson like this. Why unfortunate? Richard wondered. Mom says I'm a blessing. Grandpa Ben, when his grandson came to visit him, told interesting stories and taught him to play the guitar, which Richard had a passion for since birth. He would be a musician, his grandfather said. But Ben, what kind of profession is that for a man? Objected Mike. Let him play for the soul, but he should keep his hands and head busy. However, at the age of 5, the boy was given to a music school for classical guitar class. Just before school, the bell rang in the apartment. Police Lieutenant Smith, may I speak to Mike, please? I'm listening. Could you come down to the station, please? Sure, something's come up. It's an old assault case against you. How many years ago? Yeah, but new circumstances have come to light. The man didn't tell Claire, pregnant with her second child, not to worry, but drove up to the right address. Mike, I think we found the man who attacked you. Who is he? He's been incarcerated for over 5 years. That's where he confessed. So the case is closed now? Not exactly. He'll be tried and given a new sentence for robbery. But now we know he didn't act on his own initiative. That's how. He told us. Who asked me to scare you a little with a knife? I'm going to show you some pictures and I want you to take a good look. See if you recognize anyone." Mike looked at the 6 male faces on the table in front of him. One of them seemed vaguely familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen this man. "Don't you recognize it?" asked the interrogator. "I've seen this one somewhere, but I can't remember where. Maybe the name will tell you something?" "Max." "Of course, Max. How do you know him?" "When my wife was a sophomore, she was going to marry him. And you beat her off?" "Not exactly. He beat her off. My wife and I have been together since sophomore year." "Then why did she call off the wedding?" "He left her in a difficult situation, and I helped her. So she broke up with him." "So it was revenge?" Mike shrugged. He seemed like a decent guy, but who knows? Max is being treated in a psychiatric hospital. "No way. You mean there's something wrong with his head?" "Well, only a doctor can tell you that. We caught him sending threatening notes to various addresses. We wanted to lock him up, so we sent him for evaluation. The doctors came up with a verdict and a diagnosis. He's the one who asked me to attack you." Mike's mind flashed back to the details of his injury and the note at the wedding. Well, it all makes sense then, he thought. The husband had told Claire everything when he got back. "You see, he's just a sick man, and you and I were scared," Mike concluded, looking down at his wife's belly. "When Louise is born, we'll have a fairy tale." However, these dreams were not destined to come true. The girl was born dead, wrapped in the umbilical cord. Claire cried for a long time. Mike took a vacation, trying to stay close to his wife. When the woman came to her senses, she told her husband, "No more children. Richard's here, thank God. I'm going to do my work." And she started writing her dissertation. Mike, of course, was upset. But on the other hand, Claire was back to her old self. And so as not to bring her back to a difficult subject, he accepted it. Steve helped a lot with Richard's upbringing. He was already an adult uncle, but with pleasure took the kid to the stadium and went with him to ride in the park on the merry-go-round. When the parents were busy, Tiffany's grandmother and father-in-law and mother-in-law now went to the dacha for the whole summer and took the grandson with them. He ran between the 2 yards and grew up on milk and bread like a real country boy. The only thing he carried with him everywhere was a guitar. And at Grandma Louise's house on the bench gathered a crowd of teenagers, in which Richard was the smallest, but enjoyed great respect, because he could not only play the guitar famous hit songs, but also pick up by ear those songs that he did not know. Mike had already resigned himself to the fact that his son would follow a musical path. However, in high school, Richard sat down to study and was going to enter the engineering department of the Institute of Mining. "And who are you like that?" Claire lamented. "Well, would have followed in his father's footsteps in transportation, or as an uncle lawyer." "No. And you're going to the mountains for nothing." "Mom, it's an up-and-coming field." The kid justified it. "There are no promising directions now. Everyone only sells and buys." "You don't need an institute for that," Claire grumbled. "Leave your son alone," Mike told his wife when they were alone. "It's his life. Let him decide for himself how to build it. But I want what's best for him. Claire, this is a different time. Richard doesn't sit behind other people's backs. He makes his own decisions, which means he's a good man, and it's up to you and me to support him." Richard passed his entrance exams well and got into full-time school without any problems. However, he did not like to sit on the neck of his parents, and he began to work part-time playing guitar in restaurants. Once again, Claire had her fears. What if he got drunk? They're always tipping. They're always carrying a glass. They don't drink with cups, they drink with teapots. Mike laughed, but the mother's heart was restless, and, as it turned out, not in vain. In one of the restaurants there was a gas explosion and a fire. Just when Richard was improvising on the guitar with the lead singer, who accompanied his voice, they were in the hall far from the exit. Richard dragged the girl behind him and led her outside. The guitar, on the other hand, remained in the burning room. The boy grieved for it like a lost relative, until Uncle Steve brought him a great new instrument, bought with large payments after a business trip. "Another fire?" Claire lamented. "What on earth is it? It's like we're being chased by them. Other people never have one in their lives. This is the third one we've had. It's Richard and me being tested for neopalatability." Mike smiled. "Don't get upset. It's an accident. You see what time it is now. All the communications are getting old, and no one wants to make new ones. It's a waste. That's why there are floods and fires. No, we only have fires, Claire argued. Need I remind you how you fell in the mud when you were a student? There was a flood, Mike said, and then he regretted it. He saw his wife's eyes fill with fear and realized she remembered the wedding note. Mike put his arm around her. That's it. Forget it. Everything's going to be all right. Grandma Wendy promised us. His wife smiled. At the end of September, Ben got sick and never left the hospital. He caught pneumonia and couldn't be saved. Pam immediately gave up. Even though she was supported by Tiffany and the children, she cried a lot and withdrew into herself. She dreamed of going to the village where everything reminded her of her beloved husband. But she didn't have time. She went to bed in March and didn't wake up. Claire and Steve buried her next to her father. Richard asked to live in Steve's apartment. I'm closer to the institute there, he explained. And then, Steve is often on business trips, so the whole apartment is at my disposal. I could make music or watch TV without disturbing anyone. My uncle didn't mind. After graduating from the institute, the son went to another city. He worked at the Combine and gave concerts in the local House of Culture. Soon rumors about the guitar virtuoso spread first throughout the North, and then throughout the country. Steve, who more than once offered his nephew to take up professional music, once again said, Richard, well, you're going to drag on for a long time. Come on, give up your engineering. It's time to start playing gigs. But Richard stubbornly refused and held concerts only during his big vacation. Then he traveled around the country with his guitar and played on open stages in small towns and cities and in large concert halls in cities of millions of people, and then returned to the mill. Claire had already defended her doctoral dissertation and became well known among her colleagues in the country. Tiffany was proud of her daughter-in-law and invited her to celebrate in the village where she had moved permanently. This was after Mike and Steve had installed water and sewer in the house and put in a boiler. Now the hut looked little like the one she'd lived in as a child. Tiffany didn't have to watch the birds or grow a vegetable garden. The children brought her everything she needed. But the special occasion was when her favorite grandson Richard came to visit. This time he also came to visit his grandmother for a while with his guitar. Everyone congratulated Claire, and her son sang her a romance. They had practiced a little before and got a big round of applause from Steve and Grandma Tiffany, and Mom had tears in her eyes. Then Richard played his parents' favorite song, There's Only a Moment, and everybody sang along. They're guys. It's so good to be with you that I don't want to go anywhere, Tiffany said with emotion. Where are you going? Surprised her son. You're already home. Yeah. His mother looked at him sadly. She felt something, Claire said, standing in the cold wind at the grave of Mike's mother, whom they had just buried. Remember when we were singing? And it was like she was saying goodbye to both Richard and Steve. Mike nodded. Mom was shattered by a stroke. A month after their beautiful evening together, she'd been in the hospital for 2 more weeks, almost paralyzed, unable to speak, and only looking at the kids with sad eyes and tears. Now she's out there with Grandma Louise and Grandma Wendy, Mike said. And with her parents and little Louise, his wife added. They never believed in God, but now here in the cemetery, they would like to know that their loved ones are all together somewhere, and they are well there. When Claire retired, the Institute gave her a trip for 2 to a sanatorium. She was as excited as a child. Well, and you're all about the sea. Let's go to the mountains. We'll walk, drink mineral water. We'll improve our health. We'll live to be 100 years old. Right, Mike? We will. He chuckled, trying to cram all the things his wife had prepared into one suitcase. Steve took them to the train and said goodbye. Where will you be? My sister asked. Yes, I'm going on another business trip. The man answered evasively. Chechnya. He nodded, and Claire waved her head silently. Then she hugged him tightly around the neck and kissed him. Take care of yourself. And see you later, my favorite little brother. Bye, sis, Mike. Keep an eye on her, you know. I know, smiled son-in-law. In Essentuki was quiet, calm, but by Mike's nature boring. He told his wife. It was necessary to go by car, not by train. We could have seen the whole neighborhood. So let's take the bus, she suggested. And even though Mike realized that the bus wasn't the right way to go, they drove around. Claire wanted to go to one town, but the buses were inconvenient, and the couple couldn't fit their schedule, so it was a no-go. Then we'll go there next time. The wife resigned herself. The vacation flew by in a flash, and again they were loading into the train to go home. The compartment with them turned out to be another married couple of about the same age. They chatted a lot, discussing trips and talking about their families. Toward evening, when Claire stammered about Richard, the neighbors said, "Oh yeah, we know, we love listening to him," and they began to sing. There's only a moment. Claire and Mike started to sing along. At that moment there was a flash. Then all at once everything went black. There was a crash, and the roof collapsed on the passengers. Mike came to his senses from the weight of the debris on him. He opened his eyes and saw flames, and not far away Claire was unconscious. The man tried to move and couldn't. He tried to scream. All he got was a moan. He looked at his wife again. The flames were getting to her. "We've got to get her out. I'm the one with no fire. She will burn before my eyes," he thought, making desperate attempts to free himself. Something moved above him, and the rescuers heard the sound. They ran up and began to rake the wreckage of the carriage over him. "Wife, wife." Mike shouted to them and pointed his eyes at Claire, but the men were busy and paid no attention to his glances. They just said, "Hang on a little longer, we'll get her out soon." Mike could see the flames dancing around Claire. It hadn't reached her face yet, but it was close by. Finally, the heaviness eased and the man tried to rise. He failed and felt very dizzy. With tremendous effort, he got up with the help of the rescuers. They tried to take him to the embankment, but he rushed in the other direction to his wife. Finally, they saw the woman. "There's a fire out there," they said, trying to hold Mike back. "You can't go in there. We're putting it out now and we'll get it." But Mike walked silently and stubbornly toward her. He saw that she too was under the rubble and realized that he could not get her alone. So he leaned over his wife, and with his body he cut her off from the advancing fire. Rescue workers rushed over to extinguish the flames. They poured water on Mike's structures as well. He saw that Claire's body was burned, but her face was untouched by the fire. When his wife was pulled out, she was wrapped in a shock blanket and sent by helicopter to the hospital. The husband was also taken there by ambulance. Claire died of burns over a large area of her body Saturday at midnight, not living to see Sunday. Finding no injuries on Mike, he was discharged the next day. The grief-stricken man took the train again. All the way he sat staring at one point. Mike tried to think, but in front of his eyes he saw Claire and the flames coming towards her. Steve met him at the train station. He silently hugged his son-in-law and drove him home. The next day he said, "They've officially confirmed the attack. They planted explosives on the tracks and detonated them remotely. Claire's body's being shipped here. We need to tell Richard." But Richard already knew. He arrived a day later. The crematorium's farewell room was crowded. Girlfriends, colleagues from the institute, and students came. Many nice words were spoken. And Mike watched the coffin going into the furnace and thought, "The fire got to you after all. I couldn't keep you safe, my love, I'm sorry." Richard was afraid to leave his father alone in his condition. But Steve assured his nephew that he would look after Mike. So the son left for his place of work. After the funeral, the man had a severe stomachache. At first he thought it was nervousness. Then he decided that it was the mineral water on vacation that affected him, so he put off going to the doctor for a long time. But when he did, he was immediately sent to the hospital for examination. The attending physician came to his room. "You are an adult, and I will talk to you frankly. We have found malignant growths in your colon, and we are transferring you to a specialized center. There are now advanced treatments that will improve your quality of life." When the oncologist saw the results, he suggested the man undergo surgery. Mike didn't care. After Claire died, he didn't want to live. But Steve talked him into agreeing. After 6 months of treatment, the doctor told Mike he was in remission, but you have to have a checkup every 6 months. The man nodded. He became interested again in the news, Richard's concerts and sporting events. After the treatment, Mike felt better. He had more energy, and he even went to visit his son to see where he lived and worked. They got out hunting together. Richard laughed and told his father tales of urban northern life. 2 weeks after his father's departure, in a town near a mine, a blaster made a mistake with the charge. A rock fragment penetrated Richard's helmet and penetrated his skull. He was immediately taken to the sanitary unit, and then by air ambulance helicopter to the regional center. For some time the man still lived, and then passed away. Mike buried a native man for the second time in a year. He had no tears, no feelings, only a kind of emptiness, and his stomach ached again. He returned home and automatically tidied up the apartment, hung up his wife's things neatly, and began dusting the bookshelves. His hand caught on a volume of Cicero. Mike looked at the book and pulled out a folded sheet. The other would envy him. Grandma Wendy was right. We had a good life together. But she never told me anything about the end. And Max was right. They're all in there together now. And I envy you, Claire. Richard's with you now. Mike refused further treatment. He spent his last days in a haze of painkillers. Then one night he saw Steve sitting next to him. You're in charge now. Mike smiled at him. He closed his eyes and stepped into eternity.